Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Learn with Jason. We're doing a special Wednesday edition because my schedule is a nightmare. Today on the show, we got Otto Kukic. Thank you, Otto, so much for hanging out with us. How you doing, man?
Doing well. How are you, Jason?
I'm doing well. So we have done this before. This is not your first rodeo on Learn with Jason, but it's been a minute. So the last time you were here, you were at Auth0. We were talking about authentication, but that's not what we're doing today. We are instead we're talking about something else. So for those of us who haven't caught up with you since the previous show or who aren't familiar with your work, do you want to give us a little bit of a background on yourself?
Yeah, sure thing. So my name is Otto Kukic. I work as the lead developer advocate at MongoDB now. So, my life, my day-to-day is creating content for developers around MongoDB databases and, how to, databases, your backend is, one of the most important things of your app. So, I try to help developers understand if MongoDB is the right solution for them.
Mm-hmm.
And if it is, how to get the most out of it. And it's a really fun job. I love talking to developers. I love doing live streams, videos, YouTube, all that good stuff. And I love being on Learn with Jason.
Yeah, I'm happy to have you back. Today's going to be fun. And I'm excited about today because it tackles something that I think it can be one of the most intimidating parts of learning to code. And that is, I want to store some data. Like I've got a form, I've got user accounts, I've got, people are submitting things. Where do I put that? How do I make that secure? How do I make sure that I can read and write from that? And like historically, and I think that this is intimidating for good reason, because if you see the vast majority of like big public fiascos that companies are facing right now are around data leaks, which means that they didn't lock down their data properly, or something happened and they ended up exposing a bunch of people's passwords or credit card numbers or something like that. So databases can be pretty intimidating. And I also remember from my early days in working as a developer being really intimidated by just the amount of setup that I had to do to get a database running. It was like, you had this really instant on-ramp with something like MAMP or WAMP or whatever you were using, where it would just spin up like, okay, it's running like Apache and MySQL and PHP, and I could build a site, and I had that. But then I was like, okay, I got to get this online. What do I do? Right. And so you would just kind of like hit this wall. And so you'd go find this hosting. Like you could use, I think Media Temple had a setup where they would deploy PHP and MySQL to a database. I had no idea if it was secure. I had no idea how they were setting it up. I just knew I could create a table, and I was just trusting my tools to have set good defaults for me. But like I couldn't change it or anything. And so I always felt like I was in this very weird space of like acting as a DBA, a database administrator, but I didn't know what I was doing, and I only sort of understood like performance stuff. I only sort of understood scale. And so when things got popular, my sites would just go down and I would be like, hey, good problems, right? Like, just laugh it off because that was the best I could do. But is that really true anymore? Like, is there that much work required to get a database up on the internet now?
If you are self-hosting these days, there is still that curve of, how do I get this deployed? How many resources do I need? Where do I deploy it? Which ports do I open to make sure that only certain hosts can connect to it? And yeah, it is still very much a full-time job to manage your own database. But luckily, the big players in the game have stepped up and offered a lot of managed solutions. So whether you are using, MySQL or Postgres or MongoDB, there is a provider out there that has kind of, made a SaaS out of it, where you don't have to do as much of the manual, setup, deployment, making sure the configuration settings are all correct. That's all the hard stuff that we at MongoDB do with Atlas. So we just make it simple for you to go and, click a few buttons, get a cluster set up, connect to it, and read and write data. It's a two-way street. Like if you wanted to manage everything yourself, you absolutely could. And it's still a uphill climb to figure out all of the settings. But the good news is, in today's SaaS world, there is probably a SaaS out there that can help you out.
Yeah, yeah. And so, I mean, maybe this is something that's worth thinking about a little bit is if I'm thinking about building an application and I need a database, how would you, I guess, start to make the decision? Like, when is it worth it to go self-hosted and do all that extra work versus using something cloud-based and managed?
Right. I mean, for me, I used to be of the opinion that I want to own and control the entire stack, whether I'm building an application. Like, I had a big distrust of SaaS platforms because, what if tomorrow Auth0 goes down, or what if,
Sure.
XYZ goes down and then my application is down. But over the last couple of years, I've really, changed my thinking and believe that the way to get your app out there fast is to utilize as many SaaS applications as possible. And like for example, with authentication, could I code it myself? Absolutely. But I think the talented engineers at Auth0 are always going to do a much, much better job than I could. They're
Mm-hmm.
going to think about all the edge use cases, all the data storage requirements, how to properly hash and secure the passwords that I have some knowledge of, but I am far from an expert. And same when it comes to databases. Like I would never personally try to self-host my own database because one, you're not really saving that much money because databases are very resource intensive.
Right.
So whether you deploy it to EC2 or bare metal, you're still going to be paying a decent amount of money. But now you've left the whole management side of it, which is a lot of hidden costs.
And that's actually a really good point because like one of the things that I think what you said about like I want to host my own thing, I want to control my own thing. I believe that for the things that I am good at. So
Mhm.
like I want to build my own front end. I have years of experience writing front ends, building front ends, and as a result, I know that I will do a good job on that, and that I'm usually frustrated if I try to use a tool that will do it for me.
Yep.
However, when I'm doing backends, like I'm not a DevOps pro. I've done DevOps. I can muddle my way through it. I've done that kind of work and like I've done it successfully, but I tend to suffer less when I just let a company that specializes in that thing take control of it for me because I don't know the intricacies of what happens when, what are firewall rules that I need to set up. I can copy paste them out of a tutorial and hope that the person who wrote the tutorial is an expert. And the same with like configuring Nginx or Apache or something like that. I don't really know how that stuff works. I know how to get it running, but I know how
Mhm.
to get it running because I'm capable of piecing together information from tutorials around the web. I don't know the ins and outs of it. Somebody who's running one of these services, they're specifically employing highly skilled people whose whole job is to know those things. And so
Exactly.
that's where I've started to land is like, okay, if I'm actually the expert, I want to do it myself. I want to own my own thing. But if I'm not an expert, I don't want to get that level of hubris that because I'm a really good React dev, I
Mhm.
should somehow own my own MySQL deployment or MongoDB deployment. I'm not a DBA. I'm actually quite bad at that. Like I've had many sites get overloaded and go down because I don't know how to scale a database. So maybe I should just trust a professional with that. I think
Right.
that for me, at least, where I've started to see the trade off come in is you have to hit a level of scale where pennies matter,
Right.
right? Like, because what you're talking about when you start self hosting is you have to be making so much money off of a service that paying a team of DBAs and like DBAs in this current work environment are making like 200 plus grand a year.
Oh yeah.
So are you making enough money that paying a team of DBAs $1 million a year in total comp is going to save you money? And the answer for the vast majority of us is no.
Right.
So that's where my trade-offs start to be drawn is like unless I am 100% sure that I can do a good enough job that it's not going to cost me money, I look at the economics like it needs to be actually worth bringing it in-house to bring it in-house because otherwise like I can let a team of experts do this job for me and pay them significantly less than it would cost me to do it in-house.
Yep.
Or what take on a bunch of cost and headache now? Like, it just doesn't make sense.
Exactly. And when it comes to like, developers, I think a lot of us, have a lot of personal projects that we work on, small applications, and most SaaS platforms, including, MongoDB Atlas, have a very, very generous free tier where you can develop your application, build the whole thing without paying a dime. And, then when you're ready, when you get to that scale, if you get to that scale, then, swapping it out, if you decide you need to, isn't as painful. But this way you can, just start coding, stop worrying about infrastructure, stop worrying about where it's hosted, just have it run. Just like serverless. I mean, you don't care where that server is hosted, how, who manages it. You just care that when you call that endpoint, that you're going to get the result you expect.
Right. Yeah, that's exactly it. Like I want to work on my idea. I don't want to work on the boilerplate and the foundational stuff that lets my idea function. I want to just click a button and have that done for me. And so this is actually, I think, new for Mongo, right? Because previously I would have needed to deploy and not self-host, but like deploy Mongo to some cloud instance and configure it myself. Is Atlas aiming to solve that problem? It's like a one-click managed solution?
Yeah, exactly. So MongoDB Atlas, we actually just celebrated the 5th anniversary of the kind of managed service.
Oh, so this is not new at all. I just have not been paying attention.
Yes, so it's not super new, but it's also, it's something that we at MongoDB found that, a lot of people still use the community edition, the enterprise edition, and host themselves. But for developers that don't want to manage databases, instead of having to hire, MongoDB DBAs, having a service that we can kind of compartmentalize, componentize and expand on the platform, because MongoDB these days is so much like with Atlas, it's so much more than just a database. It has all sorts of different features and functionalities that build on top of the data layer, where, and I'm sure we'll get into some of that as we, when we get into the code. But, the idea of MongoDB Atlas is it is your database backend for, for whatever you need, whether it's search or, offloading the data that you don't need into a data lake, or working with data from different, in different formats from different platforms, just kind of bringing it all into Atlas and making it your one-stop shop for all your data needs. So that's kind of the approach we took with Atlas.
Nice. And there's a question in the chat from Anthony about Atlas and Realm. So what's the relationship between Atlas and Realm?
Sure.
Maybe start with what Realm is, because I'm actually not familiar with it.
Sure. So Realm is a mobile database for like iOS and Android applications and hybrid apps, where Realm is a local database that lives on the device, and it functions very similarly to MongoDB. And we actually acquired Realm a couple of years ago, and now we have a functionality within the Atlas platform called Realm Sync that allows you to write your data to the Realm database on the device. And then when you're connected to the internet, to a network, you can sync that data to a MongoDB database and kind of keep all of your clients in sync. So Realm is kind of our take on mobile databases, and Realm and Realm Sync kind of integrate seamlessly into the Atlas platform.
Very cool. So okay, all right. So I think any other questions that I have are going to be more easily explained by showing than telling. So why don't we switch over into pair programming mode here? And before we get too deep into things, let's do a quick shout out to our sponsors. So we've got Jordan from White Coat Captioning here today. Thank you so much, Jordan, for taking the time out and doing the live captioning here. We're able to afford White Coat Captioning through the support of our sponsors. We've got Netlify, Fauna, Hasura, and Auth0, all kicking in to make this show more accessible to more people, which means a lot to me. And I'm happy that everybody can enjoy the show regardless of the way you like to consume content. So if you need that, head over to learnwithjason.dev. And while you're clicking on things on the internet, you can find Otto on Twitter. Make sure you get over there and... Why am I not following you? What happened? So I am now following Otto. You should be too. Get in there and get a follow in. And then we're going to be talking today about MongoDB, and specifically, I think we're going to be working in the Atlas platform. And I think, well, we're going to try to do, so let's talk a little bit about the project, right? So what I'm interested in, because it's where I spend a lot of my time, is most of the apps I build these days are using that Jamstack approach of like a decoupled front end and precompiling as much as possible, but I always need some dynamic thing. And I don't really want to have to spin up a whole backend server to do the one or two dynamic things that most of the apps I build need. So I'm always using serverless functions. And so what I would love to see today is how can we build an app that uses MongoDB Atlas and serverless functions to do some read write.
That sounds great. I think MongoDB Atlas will very easily, help us solve this use case. And there's a couple of different ways we'll be able to access MongoDB, and one of them is, using the MongoDB drivers directly. But we can also, if we have time at the end, show that realm functionality where we can deploy serverless functions from the Atlas platform, which is kind of exclusive to Atlas.
Okay, cool. Yeah, okay. So if I want to get started, what's my first step? I'd hit the...
So a good first step would be to try it for free. We don't require a credit card or anything to get started. You just sign up for MongoDB Atlas. And then, as you can see, we have multiple ways of working with it. You can, deploy it with the cloud with Atlas on premise or however you want. But Atlas is the way to go, which gives you all of these additional capabilities.
Okay, give me just a second to actually... How do I get this to come off this screen? Let's go over here, maybe? Anyone? Will you do a... Okay, let me pull this off screen real quick and generate a password. Let's do a password generator. Autofill that.
Yeah, 1Password is one of the greatest password managers there is. So
I love it so much. Let me find... There's the password. Good, I'm agreeing. Okay, let me pull this back over now that I've got everything in. So I have I generated a password and I've agreed to the terms of service, so I'm getting started. And hopefully I haven't created an account like 10 years ago that I forgot about. Didn't. Here we go, I think. Okay, verify my email. That's over on this screen. Let me do that real quick. Okay, I'm going to click this email and just going to drop it right in here. Verified.
Boom. And now we are off to the races. So we have this kind of onboarding experience that allows you to set up your account really quickly. So it's just a couple of fields that'll get us started.
I use JavaScript. Okay. Set up my project name.
So on this screen, this is kind of where you can choose what type of database you want to deploy. And we recently previewed our serverless offering as well that allows you to create instances and have them scale automatically for you. So it's still in preview. It's still not, you can use it, but what I would recommend for now is that we use the free shared cluster, which is going to get us through, which is going to get us started. And you can always change your instances, as your application grows. But from here, you just, you can leave all of the defaults selected or change them as you want. But from here,
let's move them close to me so that things are as fast as possible today.
Nice. So that's the free cluster gives you 512 megabytes of storage. It's free forever. It's
512 megabytes is going to go a long way unless we're storing files, right?
Oh yeah.
And then do I need, let's see. So I'm not going to do a backup since this isn't production data. Do I need to set a cluster name?
Nope. Cluster 0 works just fine.
Okay.
And with the free tier, so recently we released MongoDB 5.0. On the free clusters, it's still MongoDB 4.4. But that doesn't really make too much of a difference at the moment for our purposes in this demo. But MongoDB 5.0, if you are using it for a production For production level workloads, it adds a couple of really nice features to make your experience much better. So it's going to take a minute or two to get the cluster set up and deployed. So now it's doing all of the backend stuff.
Should I set up a front end while we're doing this?
We can do that. Yep.
Okay. So what I'm going to do is, do you have a preferred, like, is there a specific template language or anything I should use, or should I just stand up anything?
Stand up your preference.
Okay. So I'm just going to, I have a template for new projects. So we can use this template and we're going to put it on, can I put it on Learn with JSON? I can. And we'll say, let's learn MongoDB. And then we'll make this public, create the repository. Okay, so then I can come out here and I'm just gonna repo clone this one and let's move into it. Okay, so then that I can npm install and then we can netlify dev. So this is like an 11D project, so we'll be able to write just plain old HTML and JavaScript in here because of the way that this is configured. So no framework things. So let's open this up. And that opened over in the wrong browser, so let's pull this over. And then let's also start this thing. I'm going to see if opening this browser causes it to use the right browser. I don't know why, but it like really does not like this particular browser. When I try to run local dev, it always pops open the other one. Yeah. So this gives us our demo. And if I look in my source and this index.html, it's just like whatever we want in here. So I can do like an H1 of let's learn Mongo. And so it's like a wrapper, right? So this is basically so that we can focus on just the code we need and everything else is kind of abstracted away.
Right on.
So hopefully by now we've got a cluster. Hey. Sweet. All right. So what's our next step here if we want to pull something in?
So I think the next good step would be to load some sample data into the database. Okay. This way we can instead of having to write data and kind of make a mock application, MongoDB Atlas provides a bunch of sample databases. So if you want to click on that ellipses menu on the cluster, there will be a load sample datasets button. And this is going to load a bunch of different datasets that we can work with. So we can hit that for now. Okay. That's also going to take about a minute to load. So while we're waiting for that, I think a next good step might be to set up our database access and network access to enable our front-end application to be able to connect to the database cluster. Yeah. So the first thing we'll want to do is head over to database access. And in here, we can create a new database user and just use username and password authentication as the method. Okay. And for this one, you can set it to whatever you'd like.
Okay, so let's call this one. So, quick question: are we going to be doing this as like a read-only user and a write-privileged user for kind of like public access and privileged access, or are we trying to do this? Is there a different permissions model for Mongo?
So for this one, just by creating the default user, it's going to give them the read and write privileges to any of the databases within the cluster. But we could fine grain it if we were building a real production application, we might want to create a database user that has scope down permissions to only certain databases. Okay. But for right now, I think just keeping everything as default would be fine.
Okay, great. And so what I'm going to do is I just created. I auto-generated a password, so I'm just going to store these over here so that I don't lose them. Read and write is the default. We could set it up to do all sorts of things, but we're not going to deal with that yet. So restrict access temporary user. Okay. All right. So let's add them.
Cool. So now we have a user created. The next
Okay.
thing would be to go into the network access tab. And by default, when you deploy a cluster on MongoDB Atlas, it doesn't talk, like you can't connect to it. You have to give it access here in the network access tab.
Hmm.
So, the way to do that is to enable an IP address. And by clicking on that button, it'll give you the option of adding your current IP address or allowing access from anywhere, or if you have a certain list of IPs that you want to enable. I know in a lot of serverless environments where you don't know what the IP, where the app is going to be deployed from, where it's going to be talking. We encourage you to set it to allow access from anywhere.
Okay.
But if you do know your IP address, where the app is going to be deployed, then you can scope it down to that.
Got it. Okay. So
But
we're using serverless, so I've set it to allow access from anywhere. And so what we would want to do in a real database here is our user would need to probably have like restricted permissions to only allow write ops on things that it should be able to write. So for example, if I'm setting up an app where I want people to be able to like submit posts, I would maybe give them the ability to create and modify posts, but not to delete posts. And I would want to restrict it to only modify posts that they had created themselves. And those sorts of things that manage that. It sounds like we're probably not going to have time to do that today. So we're using sample data. We can do whatever we want with it, right? No risk. So,
Yeah.
But in a more production environment, it sounds like we would want to get a little bit more restrictive about that.
Definitely. Yeah.
Okay.
So now that we have our database access, we have our user, we have our network access enabled. If we head back into the databases section, we can see if our sample data is in. And it might be, so if you want to hit the browse collections button, it'll take us to an in-browser view of the collections that have already been loaded in. So this is going to allow us to actually view our data, and we can actually manipulate it in here as well, add new records, delete records.
Nice. Okay.
And it looks like it is still working.
It's doing its thing. I mean, it's 300 something megabytes that we just loaded in here, and it's it's the internet. You got to give it a minute. It's going to space.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, while we wait for this to load up, if you want, we can go to the front end and make a couple more changes, maybe bring in the node library for our serverless functions.
Okay.
Or if there's anything else you wanted to do on the front end.
Yeah, no, let's do it. Let's bring in the node library for our serverless functions here. Let me make sure we've got a package JSON. Yep, that's all good. Let's make sure I've got the right version of everything. I do. Okay. Yeah. So what package do I need here?
Sweet. So the only package we need is MongoDB. So it's just, MongoDB.
All right, let's get it installed.
And so this MongoDB package is MongoDB's official node driver. There is like if you wanted to use an ODM, like an object data modeling library like Mongoose, that's a really popular one that a lot of developers use. But for me personally, I've never been the biggest fan of ORMs or ODMs in the SQL world, and I love the node driver itself. So we can, if you're cool with it, we can just use the built-in functionality of the driver.
Yeah. Okay. So let's do this. Let's. What's our first, like, just a read function?
Yeah, let's maybe get so we were talking about maybe creating like an app that displays movies. And one of the sample data sets that we're loading in is going to have a bunch of movies from IMDb. So maybe like, getting a list of 20 movies.
Okay, so let's call it get movies. And in here, we'll just set up the basics. So we'll export async function handler. And we're going to return status code 200 and a body of, we'll just, I think for now, let's just send OK. And that way we can verify that it's all working the way that we want it to. So what I should be able to do I might have to add one setting so that we can use ESM here, but I think I'm just going to be able to hit this right away. So netlify functions get movies. Yeah. Okay. So let me change the bundler here because I want to be able to use ESM. So I'm going to set functions, and then down here I can set node bundler to ESBuild. And now when we do stuff, that's not going to do what we want. So let's restart it using ESBuild. And now there we go. So now it's running ESBuild, and we can do ES things. I probably should have asked beforehand, is MongoDB the node package compatible with ESM, or should I use the C common JS?
I think it will be.
Okay,
it should be.
All right. So if I want to load something up, do I need to set that username and password as environment variables?
Yes.
Okay.
So we're actually going to. So the first thing we'll do is bring in the MongoDB client from the MongoDB package. So we could like import Mongo client.
And is it like a constructor?
Yep. And if you want to wrap it in curly braces, because it's not the default export.
Oh, gotcha.
And then from here, once we could create a client library now that's going to allow us to interact with MongoDB. Okay. So if we wanted to create a client, which would be, what's stored in a variable. So we could
did it just do the thing? Is this all right?
That is it.
Man, Copilot. I don't even need to exist anymore. Like look at Copilot just doing the whole job.
Yep. You got the collection as well.
Yeah. Okay, so it's going to pull up the collection of movies.
Yep. So the other thing so we have the awaiting the, so it's a const db equals await mongo client.connect. We'll get our environment variable. That might work, but I think the Mongo client is a constructor, so we might actually want to move the await function and do new Mongo.client.
New Mongo client.
Yep. And then it's going to be in the Mongo client itself. We're going to pass in the environment variable, so it'll be our MongoDB _ URI from the process.
MongoDB URI.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And then from here, so what that's going to do is that's going to create our client. So maybe we change the database name to client, and then we'll call. So this is going to create a promise for us. So we'll get back a client promise. Mm-hmm. So if we create a new variable called client promise equals client.connect, that's going to take care of the connection for us.
Like that?
Uh-huh. And
okay.
And then what we're going to do to get the actual database is call, now we can create like the const db equals await client promise.
Is this not doing that?
So that gets back the connection, and then we call client promise to get the actual connection.
So we call it like that?
Without the parentheses. So we're just getting the result of the client promise.
Okay, I got you. Okay.
So from here, and one thing we also might want to do is move all three of these lines outside of the function handler, because if we do run it every single time, we're going to be making a connection to MongoDB each time. And that's going to introduce a lot of latency. But if we put it outside of the function, then it's going to pull that connection as long as the serverless function is running, so that we don't have to rerun the connection every single time.
Gotcha. Okay. Ben, I don't know if you're still watching, but we were talking about perf tips for using databases in serverless functions. Here you are, tip 1.
Sweet. And then from here, we are good to connect to our collection. So what we could do is DB, and I think that DB function is going to, I think we might have to chain it with the .db. So maybe we could rename it to something else like Mongo.
Can I just deconstruct it like that?
I don't know. We could try and see if it works.
How about we don't tempt fate here? So
yeah,
we'll get const db equals mongo.db.
Yep. And then in the DB, it's a function. So we actually put the name of the database that we want to use. So now might be a good time to go back into the Atlas UI and see what our database name is called.
Okay. So let's get in here and overview.
So then if we go back into collections, the data should be there.
Thank you for the sub, Aitor. Welcome to the Boop crew. Make sure you can boop the heck out of everything. Can y'all not hear that? Why is there no sound? What has happened? Did I mute something? Can y'all hear that? Because I can't hear that.
I can hear it.
Oh no, what is happening that this isn't playing for me? Well, no sound out. So only you can hear it?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, weird. What have I done, everyone? Does this need to go somewhere else? Is it this one? No? This one? No? Oh. Give me just a second to figure out what's going on. Done. Control audio via OBS. Yes. Wonder, well, something that I have broken.
I can hear you just fine.
So there should be noise from the stream itself, and I'm not sure why it's not doing the thing. Let's just refresh that and see if that makes a difference. Somebody give it a shot now. Let's see what happens. Nope, done. Today's not the day. I'll have to restart it and see how it goes. Okay. So it looks like we're having a little bit of issue with getting this data in.
Let's maybe do a hard refresh of the page. It could be something funky there.
Okay. I held down the button really hard too. So hey, look, that did it.
There it is. So we have the database that we'll work with is called sample_mflix.
Sample_mflix. Got it?
Yep. And if we look at that database, it has 3 different collections: comments, movie, well, actually 5 different collections. And in MongoDB, like if you're familiar with SQL, collections are, can be mapped to like tables. But if you open up like the movies collection, for example, you'll see our list of movies. And currently we have 25,000 documents in here.
Mm-hmm.
And, the cool thing about NoSQL and MongoDB is that instead of, rows, kind of flat rows, you store documents, which can be, simple one-to-one mappings of, integers, strings, etc. But you can also have arrays, other objects, nested objects, all sorts of different, types of data, all within that single document.
Nice. Yeah. So this is handy. Like we get a lot of different stuff in here. All good. Can I guess to get out here, what we need is, do I need to set the Mongo database, or should I just like?
Yep. So what we could do. So what we could do there is just set the database name as sample_mflix.
I don't even know what I just shared. Sample_mflix is the database.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then our URI is going to be like
So to get that, if we go into the Atlas UI and click on the Databases tab, there is a handy connect button. So we
Okay.
hit that and we'll say connect to your application. And that's going to give us the string. So that MongoDB plus SRV is our string.
Got it.
So
and it looks like the password is here.
Mhm.
So we need to, so basically we're going to set this in the URI here. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take this over to my other window and put in the actual password and then copy it. Okay. So then what we can do is I'm going to use, I'm just going to like nullify and init this, this project so that we can, you know, deploy it. And I'm going to create a new site. We'll call this Let's Learn MongoDB. Let's see if anybody's claimed that one. They haven't. Haha. Okay, so I can npm run build. We'll deploy the site directory. The functions folder is there. All right. So now that I've got this, what I want to be able to do is I'm going to use this netlify env, and I can actually set or unset variables. So if I look at netlify env set, oops, should have done help to show what the controls are. So I can set the name of the variable and the value of the variable. So I'm going to run netlify env set, and then we're going to go MongoDB URI, right? And then out here, I'm going to set the whole string with, so this string, but with the password in it. So I'm going to pull that part off screen so that it's what we want. Let me get that. Okay. And now I'm setting it. And it did the thing, so I'm going to clear. And then we're going to come back. So now when I run netlify dev, it will pull down that MongoDB URI. So this is now in the site itself, so it's ready to deploy, but it's not in, like, I don't have to worry about like sharing this or anything. So it's all around. Anybody on my team can use it, and it works locally as well. But I did something wrong. Cannot use import statement outside a module. It is a module. What have we done here? Did I screw something up? Let's why is it trying to use CJS here? Oh, because I can't await.
Oh, I see it. Okay. So then we can
okay, so we just need like an async function create connection, and this will move all of these bits into it, and then we need the let db equals like a I guess we can just do like false or something. And then here we'll just set db to be the db, and if db, we will await create connection, and then we'll have our database.
Boom, perfect.
Okay, so that should solve that problem. Please don't explode. Please don't explode. Please don't. Yeah. Okay. All right. So now we're getting this out. We've got some connection, and then yeah. Now what happens? Hey, what's up? The whole MongoDB account is here. I don't know who's running it, but welcome. Thank you for stopping by.
Sweet. So now we're connected to MongoDB. We're connected to the movies collection. So if we just want to send back, a couple of movies, we can run a find operation.
Okay.
So all we do is chain to the db.collection. So we could do
like collection.find.
And then we could just pass in an empty object because we just want, the first list of however many movies. Okay. And then if we just run this by itself, it's going to send us all 25,000 documents, and I don't think we want that.
Nope.
So we can chain it with a dot limit, and I think it's dot limit, right? Let's make sure.
limit it to like 5.
Yeah, and then we can also do the .toArray, which is going by default. If we just do the limit without the toArray, it's going to send us back a cursor that we'd have to manually, do a for each and then convert it into an object. But the toArray function is a helper method for that.
Okay, so I ran this, and now we got back an empty object, which means that something I've done is wrong.
Okay, so
but we didn't get errors, and that's always a good sign. So so that points to something that I have done is not doing what we want it to. So let's see.
Sample and flex is the collection. Collection.find limit to array.
Legendary or Legend Physical, the full episode will be posted on learnwithjason.dev. You can find it. Well, actually, it's going to be in the schedule right now. This will be the permanent URL for it. So once this gets uploaded, that'll be the permanent URL for this thing. All right, let's see if we can get this thing rolling.
Cool. So
is there something I can console log to like check health at certain points?
We can console log the collection const and see if that even gets us any data from MongoDB.
Okay, let's see what happens here. I'm gonna put this over here. We're gonna go over to this. We're gonna reload, and okay, so we've got, it's giving us a thing, and the DB is, oh, do I need to go into the DB? Wait, no, DB.
Nope, you shouldn't have to. So DB sample. So everything looks fine here.
Okay.
What happens if we console log the movies array as well?
Okay, let's try it again. So we get a promise. Haha.
Oh, there we go. So we would just want to await that collection.find
movies.
And now we have movies.
All right. Okay. So this is great. And that is, so we were on the show yesterday talking about debugging and like the challenge of debugging serverless stuff if you have to deploy it every time. And so that is like, this is a great example of why having a local development process for your serverless functions is so nice, is that we're able to just, okay, console log it, see if it works. I don't have to deploy that. I don't have to like create a commit history with me being completely confused. So right. That my coworkers can screenshot it and laugh at me. Like, that's always my favorite, is when we're working on a project and then you can just see somebody's commit history where it's like, it starts out very logical, like, okay, attempt to fix this to solve this problem. Then it gets progressively more unhinged as they go. And by the end, they're like, please work. Just a commit message of question marks.
Yeah. Or it's like, this one fixes it. Fix of a fix. Fix.
By the end, it's like, please, God.
Happens way more often than I'd like to admit.
Oh, I love it. It's so good. Okay, so we've done it. Like we have now with relatively low effort here. What, like 23 lines of code? We're running a serverless database connection, and we're reading from a database, and we're able to pull that from an environment variable. So this is secure. We're not sharing the details anywhere. It's not being used on the client side, so nobody can grab this and use it. And if we wanted to access this, we could do something as simple as, let's just create a script tag without that extra comma. And in here, we can like, I don't know, let's set up a function that's like load movies. And in here, we can say const response equals await fetch, and then we'll just go right to this function, netlify functions get movies. And then res.json, right? And then down here, we can do something like, let's put a pre-tag, and we can do like document.query selector. We'll get a pre-tag. We'll just grab the first one that we find, and we'll set the inner HTML to
To the response.
Yeah, to the response. Let me make this a little bit less terrible to read. So we'll set it to our movies. We make this a little bit wider so that it's actually visible what's going on. Why is that formatting so poorly? Jeez Louise. Okay, that should be a little bit less terrible to look at. It's going to auto format for me. Watch. Are you going to help prettier? You are. Cool. Anyways, if we go back to the index page now, though.
I think we had a typo in the get moves versus get movies.
Oh, I also didn't get moves, and I also have to call the function. That's a critical part of writing code. So we're going to load the movies. So now we'll see. There's our movies. Ta-da!
Boom.
And so we are now officially on our page. You know, here's all the code we had to write. No cores problems because it's in a serverless function. Nothing fancy. No real big deals that we have to do here. We're able to just dump this data right onto the page very quickly, and we did that all in a serverless function. So what previously would have felt like a whole lot of stuff, I would have had to set up a node server. I would have had to figure out how to configure Express or Fastify or something like that. I would have had to figure out how to deploy and host my Mongo database, get the connection set up so that my server can contact the database, all those good things, figure out where to put my environment variables. Then I would have had to build and deploy a front end that could talk to that back end that talks to the database so that I could do that all securely. We just did it all in what, 50 lines of code?
Yeah.
So that to me is where this really, really starts to get exciting. How much can we do as front-end developers without having to become experts? Like, so let's take this a step further. How would we go about, like, let's say, or I guess, you know, I imagine you had an idea for what to do next year. So what do you want to do next?
Yeah. So I think, you know, we have that collection of 25,000 movies, and, you know, I might want to find my favorite movie to watch, or, you know, learn more information about it. And I think a cool thing might be to show how we can easily add search functionality, because I think a lot of apps, you know, search is something that many apps need, but it's also kind of a pain to implement and build yourself.
Absolutely.
So we can show how to do that. And this is a feature that's exclusive to MongoDB Atlas. So if you're using MongoDB, you know, self-hosting and self-managing it, you know, we do have a like basic search functionality. But if you wanted a really powerful search engine on your database, on your MongoDB database, Atlas Search, it's, you know, under the hood, it's all Lucene, so you can misspell things and still get the right results. And deploying it is as simple as, you know, just creating a search index. So
can I like create searchmovies.js and we'll be able to kind of take all these bits over here and then just kind of change the way that we do this part?
Yep, exactly.
And probably get a search term out of the handler.
Yeah, so we can either...
You mentioned a search index. So do we have to create that here?
Yep. So what we would do is go into the Browse Collections section in our cluster.
Okay.
We would select our database, which would be the sample mflix, and then let's see, in there, I think it's the create button. It might be going to the movie section. And search then from indexes. Here, there is search indexes. So if you click on that, you can, by default, just hit the create search index button, and it's going to pop up a number of different ways you can do it. And we could just use the visual editor and make the simplest index possible. And in this case, we just wanted on the movies collection, and we can, you know, span it whichever database we wanted. But for now, we can just say, you know, movies search index, or hit the next button. And here we can leave all of the defaults as is. It's going to create a search index on all of the fields by default. But if we wanted to, like if we were building a search application and we knew certain fields we didn't want search on, we could fine tune it and make it, as specific as possible. But, creating a general search index on everything is fine for the demo, I think.
All right, here we go. Okay, so I've done that. I've created my search index on the sample mflix movies collection. Mm-hmm. Wait, is this a collection? Is it a table? What's the terminology here? So this is the database name.
So it's the database name is sample mflix, and movies is the collection that holds the document movies themselves.
Okay.
So this search index, again, it's going to take a couple of minutes to spin up. And while it does that, what we can do is write the code to implement our search functionality.
Let's do it.
So everything that we have so far is totally fine. The only thing we'll change is essentially the line that you commented out. And what we can do here, so there isn't in the node driver, there isn't like a search method. Mm-hmm. The way that we would implement search is by using an aggregation pipeline. And I know you said you worked with MongoDB briefly in the past. Have you had a chance to work with MongoDB aggregations at all?
Nope. I know what aggregation means. I know what pipeline means. When you put them together, I get a little foggy. Thank you for the sub, or for gifting the sub, Ben. That's very much appreciated. Nikki, spam the heck out of those boops. All right.
So when it comes to MongoDB aggregation pipelines, essentially it's a way to go further with your data. And essentially what you can do is create a series of stages that go through a pipeline, and they can either filter your documents, they can match certain documents, you can add data to the documents that are being returned, or any sort of you can even write custom JavaScript functions to transform the data however you want. Okay. And one of the aggregation functions that we have is called search. So what we'll do is write a search aggregation that's going to work on that search index and get us the results.
Okay. So I'm going to call it like results, and we'll await. Is it still in the collection?
Yep. So it'll be collection dot, and then instead of find, it's going to be aggregate.
Okay.
And then the aggregate takes in an array of objects, essentially an array of stages.
Okay. So stage one.
So
I
by
love
default,
how much it helps. That's amazing.
Copilot is so great. So right there.
I'm actually going to turn it off so that it stops stealing our thunder here. But let me turn it off here. And now, hey, I said stop it. Let me close and reopen this again so it stops helping. That should fix it. So here's our first pipeline here. And I'm afraid I can't do that, Dave. I know. That's really what we're headed toward, right? Hey, thank you for the sub, Alan. And make sure that you spam that boop. Okay. So if I want to write my first query, what I'm thinking is I want to be able to take in, so we'll get the event, and let's say that we're going to get the event through a query param. So I'm going to say, we'll call it search, and we'll get that out of event.query string parameters. That might be params. We're going to find out very quickly if I'm correct on that. Let's log it.
Cool. And
what I'm going to try is I'm going to go in here. We've got function search movies, so let's go here, and I'm going to say .netlify functions, and we'll search movies with a search of, I saw Anvil in one of the descriptions, so that should give us something. Movies is not defined, that's fine, we knew that was going to happen, but I should see search of, okay, I got it right, good.
Oh,
good.
Nice.
So query string parameters lets us get the query string out. So now I'll be able to use this search in the results. And I would like to search everything for my keyword. Is that right?
Yep. So the first step when we're creating a search aggregation, the first stage is going to be the search aggregation itself. And all of the aggregation operators start with a $sign. So in our case, it's going to be $search. and that's going to be an object. And inside of this $search aggregation, we're doing a text search. So we're going to name the next field underneath text, and it'll be a string. And
like this, or I can just put in my search query.
No, you just put in the search query. Okay. You might have to wrap text in actual like a string. So in I'm totally blanking on
like make this a string, like so.
Make text a string. So just wrap it in that.
I think that's going to get auto formatted away, but we'll see what happens.
Okay, and then so within this text, that's actually going to be an object itself. So instead of the search term, we can delete search and create it an object.
Okay.
And underneath that, we'll have query, which is going to be our search term.
Got it. Okay.
And then underneath here, we have to pass one more property, which is the path. And the path tells us, so the path is going to go underneath query.
Gotcha.
In the text object. And what the path is, it's going to be which fields in the document that we want to look at. So we can either pass in a string or an array of strings for the different documents. So for right now, if you just want to pass in a string of like plot, because I think plot is probably going to have the most information about a movie.
Okay.
And then we can go and change it later.
Okay. So this will give me my results, and then stringify those. Now, do I need to do anything with this, or is that the whole thing we've just searched now?
That should be it. I'm not sure if we'll have to write the toArray.
Let's see. It gave me events and events count of 0, which leads me to believe that I missed a step somewhere.
Let's see.
Let me try the toArray and see what happens. Empty array. Maybe my search string needs to be different. Let's go back here and let's look at a plot. Oh, is it plot or full plot? Hammer on an anvil. That should have worked.
Okay. That should work. So if we go back into our Atlas cluster, maybe the search index isn't created.
Oh, yeah, maybe.
Or is it?
Says active. So, query. Active. Anvil. Awards cast. Why is it? It's not hitting the plot.
So if we view the query syntax.
Path wild. Should I do wildcard?
We could try that. So it would be an object in the path. So that would search all of the documents.
Okay. So let's do. It's an array or an object. Wildcard. Like that. Let's go back out here and see if it does a thing.
Oh, and then maybe the other thing that we missed is adding the index name. If we go back into the Atlas UI, it had the correct.
Right.
Because I think we changed the name of the index, and I think it defaults to a certain one. So if we add that,
search goes under search like that. Okay.
And let's see if that works.
Okay, so we still got events, an event count of 0. Let me add my toArray back in and see what happens. Hey, there we go. This is great. Okay, so this is great. We've got good stuff happening here. And if we look at Anvil, we can see here's the top one that I was looking at, and it shows up. And then we've got a band called Anvil. Cool. Okay, so this is doing it, right? This is doing what we wanted.
Yep. And if you want to try putting in a different search term and seeing if it brings up something else.
Let's see. Let's just put in a name. Let's put in Anne and see if a name right? So we've got, now we've got like people's names and stuff like that, right? So this is, I mean, I love this. This is great. 621 instances of Anne, and that all happened really fast. Like, remember, that had to reach across the cloud to pull back 621 instances. Like, this is wow, this is huge. Look at how many results we got back. So yeah, this is really well done. So then there was also a question in the chat about what happens if we want to write to our database.
So we can create another function to, like, add a movie, and we can show a write operation and how that works.
Do it. Okay, so for this one, I'm gonna pull in the same bit, and I'm also realizing, like, at this point, I would probably abstract this out into a utility function, right? We would figure out how to do that. I don't think we need to worry about that right now, so I'm gonna skip it. And instead, I'm going to go here, and I want to figure out, with the event, one of the things that we're going to want to do is, like, if the event.http method is not post, we probably just want to, like, return status code. I don't know. We'll just do a 500 and a body of, like, nope. My favorite error messages, the ones that are completely unhelpful.
Totally cryptic.
So we'll make sure that you have to post to write, and then in here we need to actually do something. So I've got my database, and then what? So
then what we can do is, just like in the search, like when we did the get movies, where it was collection.find. In our instance, if we just want to write a document, it would be collection.insert1, and that's going to insert a document into our database.
Okay, so it's db.collection movies. Do I have to await this one?
You do await, because it does return a promise, so you'll just await the response.
So I do. So I will await, but I'm going to chain on this. Okay.
So it's db.collection. We have our movies collection, and then it'll be .insert1. So lowercase insert and then capital O in 1.
Okay.
And then in here, we're just going to pass in an object of the fields that we want to insert. And we can insert, again, since it's a NoSQL database, we're inserting a document. We can, insert arrays. We could insert objects. We could insert any sort of.
So we can just make up whatever we want in here, and we can say, like, we're going to insert boop true, and we're going to insert a message, and we'll say, like, hello chat, and then we'll say ideas, and we'll say, like, burritos, hugs, and pizza. Those are all good ideas. So this is a completely nonsense. And honestly, what I'm doing right now is the reason why people get anxiety about NoSQL databases, I think.
Right.
Is that I am completely not looking at what's happening here. I'm just inserting junk with no respect for the database structure at all.
Right. And the thing about NoSQL databases is you can insert this junk, and the MongoDB will happily take it in and post it to that movies collection, and you'll have the data in there. But we do actually have a schema validation built into MongoDB as well. So if you wanted to say, like, hey, this is a schema for this document in this collection, you can specify it so that if you do try to add in junk, it's going to error out, or maybe it'll just send a warning.
Sure.
And then you can also additional, like, if you really wanted to get junk in there, if you have the permission, if the user that connects has permission, they can overwrite the schema and say, I really want this boop in here, so let's add it.
Absolutely. Okay. So then is this my, like, result?
So that'll be the result of the operation. And if you want to send back the whole result, we can kind of show, like, it'll tell you what was written, where it was written, how long it took.
Yeah. So let me open up Postman. Let me undo that. Where's Postman? Did I actually open it? There it is. And in here, we should be able to post to, let's go to HTTP, and we've got a netlify function. Not now. And we'll say add movie, right? And so we don't need to pass anything in yet. So let's just post. And we get back, it acknowledged, we got an inserted ID, all good. We're all happy there. So then, actually, I wonder, so if I go back here now and I search for like pizza, does it show up? Like, is it in here somewhere?
It might be, it might not, but let's see. I would be curious to see how quickly the index updates.
Here it is.
There it is.
Here's our document. So this is like we wrote it and it's immediately available, and full chaos mode engaged on this database. So and this, and like for real, this is one of the reasons why schema validation and stuff is a good idea, is that if I did this and it was a production app and we were like trying to display the plot and the title and the genres, and then we get to this garbage pile that I created, it would either break or we'd need some kind of client-side validation. And so there is a way to hold it wrong. And what we've just done is absolutely holding it wrong.
A good way to put it. And another thing we could have done in that search aggregation is project only the certain fields that we care about, so that so that every search you do isn't sending you back all of this data, because in reality you might not care about.
How much time do we have? Can we do that in 5 minutes, you think?
Oh, absolutely.
Let's clean this thing up and let's only bring back like the title and the short plot.
Yep. So what we would do in that case is we would just add another aggregation stage. So where we have search, like that whole object closed, right there, we would do a project. So like it would be $project. And then it would be an object. And this object would be the fields that we want, either the fields that we want or the fields that we don't want.
Okay.
So we could say like we want the title of the movie.
Is it like in fields, or do I do like the name of the field in true?
You do name of the field and then 1 for true and 0 for false.
So let's do, is there a title?
There should be a title.
Awards, last updated. Am I looking right at this? Title. Oh, the title is pizza. Okay, so let's get title 1 and plot 1. And this should then change the results here so that we only get the title and the plot. Here we go. Plot, title, plot, title. And then down at the end, it looks like it found my result, but it did not return it. But if I were to do like boop 1, then this one includes boop true, but these ones don't have it, so they don't include it. So that's actually pretty great. Like that's pretty fun. And we can just really specify down. And by doing this, we also know that we can throw away any results that don't have it. So I could, for example, just filter right on this and say, like, filter if title doesn't exist, throw it out.
And we could do that like in the aggregation pipeline. So the cool thing about the aggregations is they run on the MongoDB server. So any aggregation function you write, like it's preferable to actually write it in the aggregation, the filtering logic, because it's going to return you the data set without having you, forcing you on the back end, whether it's a serverless function or a back end, to have to do that filtering yourself. So you write it all in the aggregation, and then you just get the data set that you want in the format that you expected.
I like that.
And then it like limits you from having to write additional code and kind of marry the serverless logic with the MongoDB logic.
You know what? Do you want to just walk us through how we would do that? Like, do we just drop that in right here? Or?
So if we wanted to create a different aggregation that like using the $match, like let's say you wanted
So it's like a full different thing. Like,
yeah.
okay, well, let's not worry about it then, because we're almost out of time, and I want to make sure that we don't end up like half through an idea at the end.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense.
So let's do a quick recap of what's happened here and just look at how far we got without having to really dig deep into how databases work, right? So we started out, we stood up a basic site, and we have a search function here that connects to Mongo. And then using that Mongo connection, we look up a list of 5 movies and send those back. And that's what shows up on the homepage here. We get 5 movies. Excellent. I mean, already we're happy. We're pulling data from a database to a client side in a secure way where the database credentials themselves are protected inside of a serverless function. We're able to run this locally because we're using the Netlify CLI, and Netlify Dev is pulling in that environment variable that's on Netlify so that we can set that up. And then you know what I'm gonna do, actually? Why don't we just deploy this?
Do it.
Let's git add everything, git commit, and we'll say feature deploy a working database. We'll push. And then let's open this thing up. And so this will take us over to the site, which is now building. And this should go pretty quick. 11D's fast. ESBuild is really fast. So I think we're looking at just a few seconds here. And this will actually deploy this whole site. There it goes. Look at that. Look.
Functions are deployed.
Look how freaking fast all of this is. Like 1.4 seconds, functions 1 second. Man, I love it when you don't have a big heavy build process. But anyways, this then brings us back. Here's our site running live. Y'all can go play with it right now. And then we can go out here and we can like search for a movie. So we are able to also put together functions and search movie, and let's give it a query of search, and we'll search for pizza again. Netlify functions search movies. There we go. And we've got our filtered subset of like, here's the document. It only has the plot and the title. And then down here at the end, we pulled out, did we pull out the boop? I must have, because it's not there.
Yeah, I think
I did. I pulled it out. So we've only got the title and the plot there. Great. And then we also have the ability to post. So if I take this and let's go back to Postman, and I can edit this one, and we will add a movie. Then I can post, and now we'll have, oh, I screwed this up. I had double slashes. Oh, it still worked anyways. That's a cool dedupe that it did. But now if I reload, see, we've got 2 documents down here that have our junk that don't include the title and the plot that we need. So this is all running in production. We've deployed a production app that's able to create data, read data, search data, all the things that we want. And because somebody can now go and if you want, you can go and spam this, right? And because we have the ability to do that aggregation, we can make sure that it's, you have to know what fields we're looking for, and you'd have to, if this was really production, what we'd also want to do is make sure that we're protecting, so that, you have to have a certain level of access. So we would probably want to have an authorization key or something that we checked for in this one, where we could check for I don't know, if event.headers.authorization isn't there, or doesn't equal whatever, secret key, then we could do something say, return status
401
code. 401 and a body of unauthorized. Right. So here, this would actually lock down. We just have to actually set that key to make that work. And, you know, we wouldn't want this to be like one key. We'd probably want some kind of a lookup for like who the authorized users are and whether or not they have the key that's assigned to their account and all that stuff. So there's a little bit of authorization stuff that we don't want to deal with. Honestly, like you used to work at Auth0, they're good at that. You could use Netlify Identity for this. You could use Okta. You could use like Supabase or OneGraph. There's a lot of good solutions for adding authentication. You would just want to make sure that your users were logged in and check for a valid logged in user before you would allow them to update anything in your database. And that would prevent the spamming. Because my guess is that knowing the chat, somebody's already spammed us. Chat, not a single one of you tried to hack this database. Man, I leave you alone for just like 200 episodes and you all go soft on me.
I am disappointed.
I actually do really appreciate that, chat. But no, this is super fun, right? And this is, I think, the power of this model is we barely wrote any code and we were able to get all of this done. I mean, like let's look at this. We did, here's 35 lines, here's 46 lines, here's another 23, and then our front end is 14. So we're like barely 100 lines of code, and we were able to write a full CRUD and search interface. It just feels like a superpower. Like it really feels like being a front end dev with this suite of tools means that we can do so much now. Like we can go so far, and it almost feels like the tables have turned a little bit, right? Like I feel like in the early days of my career, if you were a back end dev, your skills were like unlimited. You could do anything. And now I almost feel like it's flipped. Like having good front end abilities, being able to build a usable, good looking, functional front end, that's 90% of the battle. If you learn those skills, there's so many hosted services and platforms that make databases and serverless and these interactions and authentication, all those things that are back end concerns. For the vast majority of our ideas, for our apps, for our side projects, like you're automatically full stack. You don't have to go and do you don't have to go and learn that stuff. There's just a thing that you click the button and now you've got that control. And I'm so excited for that world.
And the thing I love about it too is like the code that we wrote it's simple. It's a couple, not even a couple hundred lines of code, but this is, minus the authentication piece, it's production ready code. Like this is what if you were building a bigger application, an application for work or, trying to get something up, these are the exact queries that you would write. These are the exact, there's no, a lot of this stuff isn't just throw away for a demo. You could go and use it and, build your idea. I think one of the taglines that MongoDB is kind of working with now is like build your future faster. And, I think we kind of showed that, like, you don't need to worry about setting up the database, worrying about where it's hosted. With MongoDB and Netlify, serverless functions, you just add that piece of code in and you have a CRUD backend. You can create, you could read, you could add search functionality, and there's, all sorts of other stuff. Like one of the other things that we're not going to have time to get into, but with MongoDB Realm, you can actually take that movies collection and turn it into a GraphQL endpoint so that all of those documents you could access them via GraphQL, and you don't have to set up the GraphQL server. You just call the endpoint and get the data that you want.
That's so cool. I love that. I mean, yeah, so it sounds like there's a whole world out there of amazing things that we can do, and none of them are asking us to become an expert in a different field. It's mostly a challenge of imagination over a challenge of skill. And that to me is the most exciting thing about right now in web dev, is like, if we can imagine it, we can probably plug together a couple of third-party services that'll do the hard part and just let us do the fun part. I'm so excited for all the things that are possible there. I love it. I'm super excited. So with that, I think we're out of time. So why don't we do this? If somebody wants to go further here, they are going to go to, the MongoDB Atlas page, which is here, right? Where else should someone go? Like, what are some other resources that people can go and check out?
So mongodb.com/developer is a really good resource for all sorts of tutorials. And, we write a lot of content on here on how to get the most out of MongoDB. Whether you're building an app with Netlify and a serverless, or you're building a, traditional, backend application, mobile application, whatever you're building. And then, on the developer side, you also find the MongoDB community. Mm-hmm. So if you have any questions, if you have any feedback, if you just want to talk about MongoDB or how to integrate it with your technology stack, that's another good place to check out. And just, come say hi. We have a big DevRel team. We're always happy to help and, get you over the finish line so that you can, build your applications, scale them, and, have fun doing it, hopefully.
Absolutely. And, if you want to connect directly, you can always go find Otto on Twitter. So make sure you go get that follow in. Let's see how good the chat did today. Did anybody go and follow you? Did we get anybody? Anybody in there? Huh?
I think we got a couple.
Yeah. Okay. So we've got that. Also, as always, we've had a live captioner with us. We've got Jordan here today from White Coat Captioning. Thank you so much, Jordan. And that's made possible through our sponsors, Netlify, Fauna, Hasura, Auth0, all kicking in to make this show more accessible. While you're at the site, make sure you go and check out the schedule. We've got so much fun stuff coming up. I can't even handle it. So tomorrow's stream, unfortunately, we had to reschedule that one. So I'm going to do something. I don't know. Maybe I'll bring a surprise guest. Maybe we'll do some solo. But either way, it's going to be great. Make sure you tune in next Tuesday. We've got Brandon Roberts coming on. We're going to talk about reactive state management. That's going to be super fun. We're going to talk about steps in and turning any data source into GraphQL. So many good things. Just look at these amazing faces. All of these wonderful teachers are going to come and teach us things on Learn with Jason. I cannot wait. I've even got more that I have to get listed on the site that I am just so slow.
Personally, I'm very excited for Lynn to come online. She's a good friend, and her UI and UX design skills are really, really amazing. So
super excited for that. I think it's going to be a blast. And like this one too, Marie Poulon, we're going to talk about like Notion, like how to organize your team, and like how do you keep track of projects, and how do you keep track of what everybody's working on, and especially in a remote world, like moving into the post Panicotta era, we are definitely looking at like async communication, organization, and remote management skills. This one's going to be so much fun. CSS Grid, like I'm so excited. This is all going to be really incredible. So make sure you go add that. You can get on the Google Calendar here. Just click this button. It'll add it to your calendar so you can see it coming. It's not a notification. It doesn't put you on an email list. Nothing like that. It's just so that you can see what's happening and don't miss an episode. With that, Otto, thank you so much for spending some time. Any parting words for the chat today?
No, thank you all for tuning in. If you want to give MongoDB Atlas a try, please do. We have a really good free tier. Find me on Twitter if you have any questions. And as always, Jason, it was an absolute pleasure spending 90 minutes with you and teaching you something new.
Absolutely. Yeah. So we're going to go and harass Alex Trust. Everybody go lovingly harass him. Say hello. Tell him I sent you. We will see you next time.
Thanks all.